Okay, we're back. The last video that you watched was about your writing style, which is a good thing to think about as you're finishing up, and especially as you're looking at other people's writing. What are the small things that are going to make a big change in your paper? But the very last thing that you would want to think about is the format. So when we're talking about format, we're talking about the way the document looks on the page. We're talking about the font, the space, what the heading and the header look like, the double spacing or the single spacing, what the references page looks like. Most of you already have experience with this because you've already done it, but I do want to point you to a particular source that I think would be helpful for you. So I'm at the A-State Library. When I go down here to research guides, it will open up this welcome to the research guides. And there are different guides on a whole bunch of different topics. You can see them here. I clicked on research and I'm going to citation style. And when I click on that, it brings me to this citation style guide. We are writing our papers in APA. So I'm clicking on APA. And down here at the very bottom, they talk about formatting your paper. So they cover the title page and what it should look like, what the body of the essay should look like, and the reference page. And if you're having trouble with the hanging indent on the references page, they have a tab just for that. But I think that a good way to go through this is just to look at an essay. So I have a sample student essay. I'm going to quickly go through these things and correct the format on this student essay so that you can see how it's done. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that it's all in the right font and that it's all spaced with no spaces between paragraphs. So let me go to the student example. I'm going to select everything, make sure that it's all Times New Roman, 12-point font. Now, while everything is still selected, I'm going to click on the paragraph button. It has an arrow pointing up and an arrow pointing down. I'm going to make sure that it's all double spaced. Okay, if I notice that there's a lot of space between my lines, there may be an issue like this. So sometimes it's double spaced and you can see that this is really big. That means that I need to remove that extra space. It could be at the top of the paragraph or the bottom of the paragraph, but this is about the spacing that you should have. Okay, so the entire document needs to be double spaced, all exactly the same. Okay, so the next thing that I want to focus on is the cover page. We need to have a running head at the top, and then we need 5 lines of information. So those are the 2 things that we're going to talk about. So let me go to the student example. I know I'm jumping around a lot. For the cover page only, it needs to have the words running head at the beginning. But I'm actually going to insert the page number first. And I want it at the top of the page and I want it aligned to the right. I'm doing the page number first because when I do the page number, everything else disappears. So I don't want to wait and do the page number second. Okay, I've got my page number. I'm actually writing the words running head and the title here was PETA. The title on the top of the page needs to be less than 50 characters. The title down here on the cover page, you can make it as long as you want. But for the top, it needs to be less than 50 characters. So you will need to condense it somehow. I'm just moving this back to the left margin by hitting the tab button. And this is going to come up later. But tab is on the left side of my keyboard. And it's right in between the button that makes everything capital letters. It's above that, and it's below the numbers. So if you look right above the capitalization block and below the numbers, there is a little button that will move you approximately 5 spaces at a time. It's right to the left of the Q, if that helps you. Okay, so I've got my header correctly. The one thing that a lot of people forget to change is that the header also needs to be Times New Roman, the entire document. So I do have to go through here and make sure that it's all Times New Roman, okay? I can definitely tell when this is different than this. I'm going to go through these and just explain what they are. Title, student name, the name of the university, the name of the professor, and if you choose to, you can add the course. I'm just going to say that's optional. All of these should be about 4 lines down. If it's double spaced, sometimes if I scan way out, you can see that it should be in the top, but not at the very top. So let me make sure that I'm 4 lines down. I'm at the very top and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not to the heading yet, so that means my heading is too low, and it's too low by just 1. So now if I backspace, I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. Okay, so we've got the cover page exactly the way that we want it. Now we need to talk about the body of the essay. The header is different. You need to remember to indent all paragraphs. And for right now, for these each individual sections, we don't really need subheadings yet. So let's just not worry about the subheadings at this point. Okay, so back in my document, I've got the word running head up here at the top, but on the second page, I do not want to have the word running head. I just want my title. And the way that I do that is if I'm in the tab that says header and footer, so I've got file, home, insert, design, layout. I'm in the one that says header and footer, and I have to actually click in the header to get there. I need to make sure that different first page is clicked. This means that whatever I type on the first page is not going to be the header of my entire document. I can type a new one on page 2, and then every other page will match. So 2 will match with 3, and they'll be the same as 4, and they'll be the same as 5, okay? Just like at the beginning though, I can tell that this is a different font than the rest of my document. So I do need to make sure that this is, oops. Make sure that this is Times New Roman 12 point. Okay. The next thing I need to make sure of is that every paragraph is indented. So the paragraphs don't start at the margin. They need to start about 5 spaces in from the margin. So I'm just going to hit that tab button again that's right next to the Q. And I'm going to make sure that every paragraph has that. So my first one has it. My second one looks good. My third one looks good. This one, for some reason, doesn't have an indent. The computer usually does it automatically when you move down. Looks like it did it here. But for whatever reason, if it doesn't have it, you need to remove it. There's an extra space for some reason here, so I'm just going to back that up. This one did not get indented. This one did not get indented. And I think that's the end of the essay. I do want to point out that if I had that extra space between these paragraphs, I would have a problem. The space between this line and this line needs to be the same as this line and this line. There should be no extra space between the paragraphs. And I'll show you what it looks like. But with that extra space, you can see now this is much bigger than what's in between the other lines. So if you have that, you need to get rid of it, okay? So all the spacing needs to be indented and every line should be the same distance apart all the way through. I also said no subheadings. I think that if the section is just 2 or 3 pages long, we don't need one. We will add subheadings later when we put all of the pieces together. Okay, so now we just need to move on to the references page. It needs to be on a new page, the title needs to be centered, and we need the hanging indent. So let's go to this student's references page. This was a rhetorical analysis, so they only had one source. And it looks like my spacing has moved this. That was my dog. My spacing has moved this all around. If I want to, at the end of my document, I can go to Insert and Page Break, and it will always make sure that I'm at the top of the page. If I want to, I can do it that way. If not, I can just push Enter a million times until I get to a new page. Regardless, I want to make sure that references is on the top line. So as soon as the white space starts, that's where references should be. If there's not any extra space between all of these, I've made everything Times New Roman, so I'm good. It looks like this student got some punctuation in here. Oops. On the outside, checking video, YouTube. Okay, everything else looks good. The last thing then that we need to talk about is this hanging indent. So if I go to view, I have the option to see the ruler. Okay, this is checked. And the ruler that I'm talking about is right here at the top of the page. So when I uncheck it, you see that that ruler goes away. If I check it, you can see the ruler is there. On the ruler, I have this little symbol right here. The triangle on the top moves the top line over as much as I want, and the triangle on the bottom moves every other line. So no matter how many lines, oops, I'm moving the whole thing. No matter how many lines I have, there we go. No matter how many lines I have, it's going to move those bottom lines. And I want those to be over 1/2 inch. If I had 2 sources here, I'm just going to repeat the same source so you can see. There is still no extra space between each of the lines. I can tell that a new source is starting because I'm back at the margin, and all of the information about that source is indented, and my next source starts back at the margin again. But of course, I'm not going to repeat the sources. Okay, so that's all we need to know about format. You have this library guide to help you if you need help. They cover the title page, they cover the body, they cover the references and the hanging indent. So please go to your document now and make sure that everything is properly formatted. If you have questions, write them down though so that we can talk about it more in class. Okay, see you guys later.